were pretty looking people, but I can tell you people, they were the devil's children. Got clean away.
Hello from Mickey and from me from Castle Goring. This afternoon we have a very interesting guest. So if I may, without further ado, I will ask Bushra Fakhoury, who is one of this country's most eminent sculptresses. She likes me to say sculptor actually, because she's very serious and it evidently is the correct way of saying it, but I will rib her a little bit about that. So without further ado, if I may, Bushra, would you like to come and join us, please? Well, Bushra, welcome and thanks for coming. I have to tell you, Bushra Fakhoury is one of Britain's top sculptors. She will correct me if I call her a sculptress, because she is a serious sculptor. And nowadays, you can't be a serious sculptress unless you are called a sculptor. So, welcome, Bushra.
Thank you for having me.
Well, Bushra, I have to tell you, is one of those fascinating individuals, but we're not going to get onto why she is so fascinating, but she's had the most amazing, fascinating life. And she has produced two of the most important pieces of sculpture recently, one of which I had the honour of having here for 2.5 years, wasn't it?
Something like that, yes.
Dunamis, which I will basically hold it up, but it will be done properly. But this is Dunamis, which was here. It's a work of genius. And Dunamis was at Hyde Park Corner for 5 years, wasn't it?
5 or 6 years, yeah.
Yeah. Then she also has had at Marble Arch.
Marble Arch, yes. Dans Gwenador.
Yes, and Dans Gwenador. We'll show these later on as well. Dans Gwenador. Now, Bushra, would you like to tell us? Well, first of all, I should tell everybody they now are. Tell them where they are now.
They're in Cambridge, outside the building of.
Don't look at me. Look at them.
AstraZeneca, outside the building of AstraZeneca, both Dunamis and Dans Gwenador.
At the AstraZeneca building at Cambridge. Wonderful location, wonderful, everything really, except that I no longer have Dunamis hair, so.
Well, you never know.
I do know. They're never going to surrender it, I do know. So would you like to tell us how you came to be a sculptor?
Being a sculptor is innate in you, in your DNA. I have my side of my father's family and mother's family. They're both artists. And I started doing sculpture when I was in the convent when I was 7 years old, using marzipan. And that's how my fingers, enjoyed what I was doing. And I was hooked on it. And when I grew up, I went to continue my education. After my divorce, I took sculpture as a serious profession in England, and I started. The work is always affected by the space, by social interaction with people, and political issues and social issues, and because I can't say it, and I'm not a writer or a politician, so I try to explain to the public what I feel in my art. So Dans Gwenador, for instance, it implies on solidarity, happiness, joining together with the aim of only friendship and love, and they are not dressed because I find that everything superficial accept the way God created us, naked, so material things are not as important. So it's solidarity and love. I know utopia is too far-fetched, but hopefully we will have in the future, we'll be optimistic to have less war and more love and solidarity. As for Dunamis, I was in Africa for 9 years on and off, living with the Samburu tribe in the forest, sleeping on cowhide at the beginning. And I was very impressed with nature and with the animals. And I find that the animals are very, very intelligent. Not only intelligent, they have something in common with us, like the elephants. They have good memories, empathy, solidarity, love. Like recently we heard that a trainer died in India, and the elephant walked around 2 days just to go and bow near the grave where his trainer died. Animals help each other, and they only kill for food, as unfortunately we kill for money and greed. So this is the dunamis. It's I've made the elephant on top because I'm giving homage to the elephant with the traits that he has with the humanity. Unfortunately, we're losing it. And it says that the power is from above. You can find it in all the religion books. Dunamis, it means power from above. That it's the energy that will give people solidarity, hopefully. I keep insisting on solidarity. And the man with the hat is not a clown. It represents the progressive of the past, from the time of the Japanese to the procession, Mary's procession. Darwishes, Phoenicians, they all have this hat that acknowledge knowledge. And that's why I put the elephant on top of in the air, kind of. Freedom. I'm always for freedom.
But it's also a work of genius. Both of them are, because they are virtually impossible to execute because they defy gravity.
Yes, they keep asking me if I've taken any courses in engineering, but it's an innate on me. I find it's playful also as well. You know, I say, it comes natural with me. So that's why I'm a sculptor. Mm. You know, it comes natural. And most of my work has also a sense of humor.
Wit as well. Wit. Because Dunamis is very witty. I mean, it has wit, you know, which is wonderful. But if you love life, and if you're connected to the better things in life, you must have humor and you must have wit. And if you don't have them, I just don't see how you can avail yourself of the pleasures that come from, I would say above, but people can say wherever else they want, but they come from somewhere outside us that's greater than us.
Yes, it's I get a lot of pleasure from my artwork. I get immersed in it, and sometimes I just it's like being high, you know. I lose time. Time doesn't mean anything to me after, and I do everything myself. I go up and down scaffolding, 8 meter, and because I like to touch the work, and I don't sketch. The sketch of an elephant is in my mind. I close my eyes and I feel how a person feels, how the body feels, how the elephant feels, you know, how it feels, the shape, I mean, and a connection with the space around it. Yes, the working with clay is very sensual. Mm-hmm. And you lose the time. You become like as if you're in a trance. It's so beautiful.
Well, of course, that's true of writing as well. When I'm writing, I lose time. And when I was studying art and I was doing a project, for instance, I remember once I was supposed to do something in replicating material, and I got so absorbed in it 6 hours later, and I realized, wow, you know, it had just disappeared. But you get absorbed, don't you, by what you're doing?
Not only that, I mean, the foundry, when I used to go to the foundry, I used to put them up. They used to workers, you used to be amazed, a woman, at my age, working from 9 till 6 non-stop. And they put, it was a lesson to them. And the owner of the foundry was very happy because he showed them, look, if she can do it, you can do it. You can work all the time. Don't take coffee breaks or tea breaks.
What are you working on now?
What I'm working on a sculpture called Nature Retaliation.
What is that?
I shouldn't speak a lot about it. But
okay, well then don't dissipate the end. I'm totally with you. When I'm writing something, I never speak about it. So I'll allude to it, but I don't go in. So don't, because it does dissipate the energy, doesn't it?
Yes, it's better not. And I'm applying also for Chelsea Flower Show with Nicole Farhi, so I don't know if this will be accepted. The other thing is, for the last 2 years, because of COVID, I couldn't go to foundries. I stayed at home and I used wood and plaster. And also the subject was nature and retaliation of nature against human being, because, we're killing all the important trees and
we're killing the important elements in nature.
Yeah, in nature.
So that we can wear more and more cheap clothes and have
it's greed and money.
Yeah.
It's greed and money. And I don't understand why people don't, under this century, they don't realize that this is really not very important to have more and more money. It's always to help other people and to help to preserve nature. And
I think it's nice to have nice things, but you don't have to ravish the planet. And, practically everything I have is either old or recycled. And, but then of course we are of a generation that is more mindful, I suppose one could say, of other benefits into life than the material. I think the world has become grossly material. But
exactly, I concur with you.
But I suspect it's going to change. I think we are in a transitional phase. I do think we're in a transitional phase. And hopefully we'll have to learn our lessons, because if we don't, we simply won't exist. The planet will continue. We won't be a part of it. What do you think?
I think I'm very apprehensive about this virtual reality and where we're going. And some people want to go to Mars, and the people on Earth are going to be more with the meta progress, which I don't think it's a progress at all. We're going to lose our humanity, and thank God I won't be around to have a look, to see what's going to happen with the virtual reality, because then we won't have any human connection. This is what I'm all about, solidarity and love and helping people, and we miss hugs and we miss being with people, I know some people in the future might have more enjoyment with the virtual reality, but I think it's sometime, science and is killing humanity.
But also, enjoyment is only a small part of life.
But they're taking away.
No, what I'm saying is, a life that's dedicated to pleasure or aimed at pleasure as opposed to aimed at constructiveness is a life that is missing the point of life, because life isn't only about pleasure. Pain is a part of life. Pain is an essential part of growth. I'm not saying one should be masochistic, but, the whole business of we were here, put on this earth to be perpetually happy and everything should be fun is missing the point of life, the growth of the spirit. Don't you think?
Yes, I'm not against science, but it's wrong when it goes beyond humanity.
Yes. And on that note, Bushra, I'm going to say thank you so much for coming and sharing some of her wonderful, rich, marvellous artistic genius, because look at those sculptures. When I had the privilege of having Dunamis here for 2.5 years, until of course it moved to the AstraZeneca building, which I have to say is wonderful, because now far more people will enjoy it. And when it was at Hyde Park Corner as well. But I would say to people, it is a work of true genius, and it is. And I say that as somebody who studied art from the age of 9 till 20.
7.
No, I studied art.
Oh, you studied,
I studied art.
Okay.
You studied from Sussex.
Oh,
from
we
7.
needed the same way.
Except I now paint with words.
Yeah,
but,
you do. You're a genius as well.
Well, no, I'm not. I may be competent, I may even be gifted, but I'm not a genius with writing. You are a genius with
Thank you so
sculpture.
much. It's very humbling. Very,
But it's true.
You make me blush at my age.
Yes, well, I thought that was makeup.
I never put makeup, just a bit of lipstick. That's why my skin is always good.
Yes, yes. You wouldn't believe it, but Bushra is 227.
It's 279.
And perfect skin. Bushra, thank you so much.
The secret is always try to be happy and give happiness to others.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
My
Thank
pleasure.
You. It's my pleasure.
So, we now go from the sublime to the ridiculous. N. Nekrasova says, Lady C, sources indicate Harry has made a few hush-hush return trips to the UK. What say you? Also, has he rarely been speaking to Charles on the blower? My dear, not only has Harry made 27,000 secret visits to the country, all of which have been suppressed because the paparazzi know everything about them, and that's why you have read about all 27,000 of them. But Harry has been on the blower to Papa 18 times every second for the last 28 hours in every single 9 days of the week for the last 13 months in this year. I hope you get how ludicrous the whole thing is and how preposterous the claims are. It is beyond belief that Harry and Meghan's people on a weekly basis can leak such dross, anything to keep them in the news, anything. There is no barrel too deep for them to scrape the bottom of it. No depth too low. No fantasy too great. No irrelevance too insignificant. No lie too puerile. There is no boundary over which their people will not stray. Last week they were the rainmakers. This week Harry has been, in fact, I'm sure it's only a matter of time before we're going to discover that Harry, shades of Padre Pio, is able to be in two places at once. He is in Montecito, reigning on all 16 thrones, R-E-I-G-N-I-N-G, while R-A-I-N-I-N-G on all 16 thrones, of course, with Meghan as well. I mean, they really must think that everybody's stupid. Or maybe they don't really care. I actually think their PR people absolutely don't care. It doesn't matter to them whether people believe it or not, because their Dumbo followers will believe they are rainmakers. They are capable and gifted. You know, I gather there's a drought in California. Meghan and Harry, please. If I go, ooh, and all the ridiculous things that idiots do, will you make sure that rain falls in California the way you made sure that it fell in Australia? Pretty please. A.M. says, Lady C, I have a friend who works at the palace. The Queen has gone to Wood Farm. Is it true that her health has suffered because of all the problems Meghan, Harry and Andrew have been causing? That's an interesting question, but I would rephrase it slightly. Meghan and Harry have been, of their own volition, causing problems. To the best of my knowledge, although Prince Andrew gave a very misguided and completely unnecessary, and one would say really stupid interview to the BBC, he has not been causing the problems so much as he has been the vehicle upon which the problems have been caused. Gratis. David Boys, Virginia Giuffre, and all of those claimants, let's put it that way. But yes, my understanding is that the Queen has lost a lot of weight, and that anybody, 37, 45, 55, 75, 85, and certainly 95, would actually be affected by the tremendous strain and pressure and bombardment and barrage to which she has been subjected. You know, as someone said to me, day before yesterday actually, people don't realise that when they attack someone's loved ones, they attack the person himself or herself. And it is infinitely worse when the attacks come from a loved one, as has been happening with Harry. I mean, Meghan is a tack-on, so, you know, people say, oh, yes, of course, I love my daughter-in-law, I love my granddaughter-in-law. Really, they love the person they've known all of his life or her life. They add on, they say they love them, but it's a politesse. But to have a beloved grandson doing this stuff that Harry has been doing has been dreadful for all concerned. Now, the Queen has equanimity. She is a very balanced, positive individual, but she's a human being. She's also old. How much more abuse is she going to be subjected to, so that indulged and indulgent and self-indulgent and abusive members of her family can effectively jack her up against a wall and try to suck privileges out of her to which they're not entitled? And how much more abuse is she, through her beloved members of the family, going to be subjected to by political, legal, and blackmailing operators? Money grubbing, blackmailing operators. I just ask the question for what it's worth. And those who feel that the cap fits, please put it on. I'm not mentioning any names. I'm not making any allusions. But if you feel that the cap fits, please feel free to wear it. Cleopatra Anu says, Lady C, did you know that the 3.5 trillion infrastructure bill, actually social infrastructure, would write into law that half the salaries of press and media journalists, in quotes, imagine half in big block capitals, would be paid by the Democrat administration of the US government? Does this not smack of Pravda, Nazi Goebbels, etc.? Think of the fascist, totalitarian, commie governments who have done this. Scary. And do I agree? Well, I'm afraid I'm not that proficient with American politics and its minutiae, but I will take your word for it and trust it is accurate. Any government that is going to pay people to be independent has just bought their soul. And they have sold their soul to the devil in a Mephistophelian bargain, and are thereafter dependent on them. Yes, it does smack of Pravda, the truth. That's what it was. Pravda was the truth in the Soviet Union. Well, we all know that the Nazi regime in Germany in the 30s and 40s made sure that all the publications printed their truth, not the truth, their version of the truth. I'm sure that the Chinese and the North Korean papers are even freer than the heavily slanted media in the United Kingdom and the United States, because they're all so free. Well, they're free, and free is a 5-letter word starting with S. And to finish it off, L-A-V-E, slave. At the moment, much of the media in Great Britain and the United States, much of it, is very heavily enslaved to various corporate vested interests. You know the old saying, he who pays the piper calls the tune. Well, they're busy fiddling for all it's worth. And they're fiddling with the truth. And they're fiddling with our civil liberties. And they're fiddling with the facts. And it is seriously distressing to anybody who has any concept of liberty to realize how completely partial the media have become in both our country and the United States of America. I think it's truly appalling, and we need to change that. And we can change it. We need to change it by standing up for what is right. And we need to stand up for the rights of others to disagree with us. And for us to disagree with them. Carol Patterson says, Caplan has been, now Caplan, of course, to those of you who don't know, is Louis A. Caplan. He is the federal judge who was appointed by Bill Clinton, who has been overseeing the Prince Andrew case. And this is really interesting. Carol Patterson informs me that Caplan has been quoted as saying he is not going to allow due process, big block capitals. He said he's throwing it out, which unfortunately there is a precedent for due to the misuse of the Me Too movement. But here we have abundant proof of innocence, and yet this judge is going to allow the pursuit of someone with no real evidence presented and no due process allowed, which is against all the law, stands for and is in essence a kangaroo court. Absolutely. But to continue, one of your commentators mentioned the possibility of an appeal where hopefully we'll have a judge who does his/her duty by the law and overturns this potential verdict of guilt. I hope so, because as best as I can understand your explanation of British courts, in America it's different, and it's the loser who pays the winner's legal fees, which are currently bankrupting Andrew. So Roberts, despite her pro bono deal with David Boies, will have to pony up $1 million to pay Andrew if ultimately justice prevails. Following the British talk show with Angela Levy, I wrote a very long section on due process, which of course originated in England in 1215, Magna Carta, and was adopted by America in 1868, and is our Fifth Amendment. In the Bill of Rights, America's Fifth Amendment says, no one, quote unquote, shall be denied life, liberty, or property without due process of the law, end of quotes. Caplan is in gross violation and egregious neglect of following the American Constitution and the Bill of Rights. I truly think the British lawyers should declare this suit as having, quote unquote, failed and being totally without merit, end of quotes, because in addition to no due process, by virtue of being admitted into the Tramp Club, she was of the age of 18. Well, she wasn't, but she pretended to be. And whatever occurred or didn't occur is beyond the pale of the law. to now 21 years later allow Virginia to cry fire, that is to accuse a man with no criminal record or history of sexual assault of rape of an 18-year-old woman whose occupation at the time was prostitution, no judgment intended, is unconscionable and legally untenable. Well, I have to tell you, Carol Patterson, this is very well considered. I've checked it out and you're absolutely right. It is atrocious, it is appalling, it is a total abuse of process, it is an abuse of the law, it is effectively thumbing your nose at justice, is what they are doing. However, what can one do? I know what I would do. And I've said before what I would do, but I'm not Prince Andrew. Presumably, the whole process is going to have to spin out, which is their intention. You know, just as how they have in other cases tried someone when they knew that the person shouldn't be tried, find the person guilty, incarcerate the person for a few years, then have to release the person. They've got their man or their woman, irrespective of justice. It makes you hang your head in shame for a system that calls itself just, and the justice system when it is anything but. Let us see what happens, because this is one that is going to go and go and go, because this isn't about justice. This is about realpolitik. This is about a game of chess. It's a massive diversion. This is what it's about. It's political. It's not legal or justice. And if they can use the law against the justice system and get away with it, they will do it, because they will have achieved their objective, which is to shield the truly guilty while nailing to the cross somebody who claims to be innocent and there is absolutely no proof to suggest that he is anything but innocent. Kate French says, "Dear Lady C, after watching your last few videos, I did some searching out and found the Alan Dershowitz case. There were some interesting facts there that I didn't know before. And may I say, I'm reading this out, and I read out the previous one because this covers terrain that needs to be covered. And it's much better if everything doesn't come from me, but it comes from other people out there who are intelligent and who have gone to the time and trouble to ferret out the facts. It shows that these facts are freely available to everyone who wishes to run across them. So if I will continue. There were some interesting facts there that I didn't know before. I didn't know that Alan Dershowitz had countersued Virginia Giuffre and her lawyers. Yes, he did. I was also surprised to learn that he had made 2 motions to the court. One to dismiss his case and another to have Boyce and his law firm removed from the case. The judge ruled that the case would go forward. However, she ruled that Boyce and his firm could no longer represent Virginia Giuffre because they could be called as witnesses. Alan Dershowitz had accused the law firm of conspiring with their client to bring charges. That's absolutely correct. Total abuse of process and abuse of the law. Eventually, Virginia Giuffre dismissed her suit. One of the allegations that Alan Dershowitz made was that Virginia and her lawyers were actually aiming at a billionaire by the name of Wexler, and that they were trying to frighten him into making a private, large, in big block capitals, settlement with her, of which the firm would, of course, get a percentage. And at this point, I need to interject and say, pro bono doesn't mean that the lawyer doesn't get a percentage. Pro bono means that the lawyer isn't getting paid as he goes along. It doesn't exclude a percentage. In fact, it often includes a greater percentage than would otherwise be available. To not interrupt myself, I wonder if you know anything about this man Wexler. Apparently Virginia Giuffre is looking to name him as well. That also made me wonder about Andrew. When this suit was first brought, I remember reading a blurb from her lawyers stating that they had reached out to Andrew privately, but that he had refused to discuss this with them. May I cut you right there and say, in fact, when they originally mooted the idea, my understanding is that they expressed or indicated a willingness to settle. And he said, absolutely not. I have nothing to hide. I have done none of this, and I am not going to be blackmailed into paying for something I didn't do. That's my understanding of what he said, and my understanding can't be far from the truth because a similar assertion was listed in the pleadings. So, if I may pick up back where I said, could this be a discreet way of sending a message to Wexler, as in, look what happens when you don't settle privately with us. Look what we'll do to you. I'll answer that in a little while. They failed with Dershowitz big time and had to back off. Well, of course they did, because Dershowitz is one of the most eminent lawyers of all time. Not just of our age, of all time. And while we're at it, I'll just go back, in fact, because it's such a long thing. I'll just go back and say, yes, I have no doubt that just as how Andrew has stated in his pleadings, that the lawsuit against him is nothing but a massive attempt at extorting a settlement out of him, it's not unreasonable to conclude that that would be his sentiment where Wexler is concerned. And that is certainly Dershowitz's sentiment where Andrew and Wexler are concerned. But we'll get to Wexler in a moment because he is a fascinating creature, to put it mildly. They failed with Dershowitz big time and had to back off. I guess he had too much clout himself in the US. True enough, he's one of the most successful lawyers of all time and very well connected. He is a Democrat, but a Democrat who was appalled at the way Trump was being treated. So that would indicate a level of even-handedness that is often lacking in partisans. I guess he had too much clout himself in the US, was very well known as a lawyer that fought for clients but also for integrity in the judicial system. That's right, and that's where he waded in on Trump's behalf. Dershowitz has also tried to help Andrew as best he could. I also wonder if the targeting of Dershowitz was also related to targeting Andrew. Once Dershowitz was sued, he would not be able to help in a legal capacity in Andrew's case, nor in the appeals. That's a very interesting point to make. It's a very standard tactic. When I was suing various newspapers for libel in this country in the 90s, my lawyer said to me, you need to instruct Judge Caplan to act for you, because if you don't, they're going to instruct him to act for them. So we got in there first. That's what clever litigants do. They get the top man on their team. Or, if they can't get him on their team, they knock him out of the running. So, in addition to putting fear and pressure on this Wexler by suing Dershowitz, it also took away Andrew's ability or any other defendant in the future to hire Dershowitz. If Andrew and his team wanted to call Dershowitz to the stand or to examine Jufra's lawyers under oath about their involvement in the Dershowitz case, I wonder if they could. Well, we'll have to see about that because, normally when you're fighting one case, you don't actually fight a former case or have a former case brought into yours unless it is so similar. And there are parallels between the two cases, actually. I would think once they were removed as her lawyers, they would not be able to retain her lawyers in subsequent matters. I don't know what evidence that Dershowitz had, and it's revealed publicly, but apparently it was enough and credible enough to convince a judge that Boyce and his firm couldn't represent Jufra. Yes, they were prevented from representing her because there was clear evidence of a conflict of interest. Also, the other lawyers had to settle. They had to settle because they had no case. Alan Dershowitz has submitted extensive material proving that Virginia Jufra is a liar to the authorities. Why do you think they didn't call her in the Maxwell case? They didn't dare call her because they know she is totally without credibility. The government would have called her had she been credible. The whole thing stinks to high heaven. We are witnessing one of the grossest abuses of the judicial system to have ever taken place. And it's taking place right in front of our eyes. And we are being told it's okay for it to happen because poor Virginia was a victim. A victim of what? And if she was a victim, was she a victim of Andrew? Absolutely not. She might have been a victim of something or someone else, but definitely not of Andrew. And we're being told we need to let the whole thing run its course because she deserves her day in court. She, a proven liar, deserves her day in court against a defendant who has to defend his honour when he has never been accused of any impropriety of this nature before. And there is ample proof that she has accused a whole host of other people incorrectly, improperly, mendaciously, and viciously. Why does this farce have to continue? It should be stopped in its tracks. It is an abuse of process and abuse of the law. Mary, and I have to tell you, to those of you who wonder why I get so hot under the collar about this sort of thing, because I've been abused. I've had the legal process used against me. I know what it's like to be unfairly attacked and abused. And I can tell you something, it's no picnic. And just because I'm a lady and he's a prince doesn't mean we're not human. You prick my veins or his and the blood flows red, the same as it does with that trust fund babe, Virginia Jufra. Mary Schaffer says, do you know anything about Wexler, the owner of Victoria's Secret and other companies? His name is all over Ohio State University, where he plunked down money and influence. OSU is a bit embarrassed now. Well, they may be embarrassed now, my dear, but they have got hundreds of millions out of him. And in fact, insofar as I am aware, the Wexler Center for the Arts at the Ohio State University is named in honor of his father. Now, I don't know the man. Never met him. If I have, I don't remember having met him. It's possible I've met him, but I really don't remember having met him. He's very rich. He is the richest man in Ohio, according to Fortune magazine. He is pretty much totally self-made. He owned Victoria's Secret. He owned Abercrombie and Fitch, the rather upmarket company. He owned the Bath and Body Works. He is tremendously successful. He was mentored originally by Alfred Taubman, the shopping mall king, who made with Wexler a vast amount of money, and Taubman went on to be the chairman of Sotheby's, and then got ensnared in a price-fixing case with Christie's, and he went to prison. But Alfred Taubman was very, very social and was for many years very desirable socially. His widow was, I think, Miss Israel, Judy Taubman is her name. Very good-looking woman. I've met them for the blink of an eyelid. She was very striking. He was very imposing, actually, in a very new money sort of way, trying to be old money. But he was, in his own way, very imposing. Wexler is a wizened old man, and he is an old man, but he is very clever, because I'm trying to get it straight. I don't want to get it wrong. In 2012, he donated $250,000 to Restore Our Future, Romney's Super PAC. In 2015, he donated $500,000 to the Right to Rise USA Super PAC that supported the 2016 presidential campaign of Jeb Bush. But you know, super duper businessmen know which way the wind is blowing. And there are many people who understood that if they were going to make sure that their hides didn't get tanned, whether by wrongdoing themselves or by being associated with wrongdoers, that they'd better jump off one bandwagon onto another. And Wexler has done this, because on the 14th of September 2018, he renounced his affiliation with the Republican Party after President Obama gave a speech at the same Columbus Partnership panel that Wexler addressed, since when he has, he's not been an active Democratic Party supporter, but he has been a political independent. In other words, to make sure that he was not implicated in the whole business with Epstein. He jumped ship. It's as simple as that. He jumped ship. Because Wexler was for many years Epstein's sole client. Sole client. According to him, Epstein ripped him off to the tune of, if not hundreds of millions, tens of millions. However, these are post-mortem accusations, because while Epstein was alive, he did not defect from Epstein's support morally, even though he has been careful to distance himself, shall we say, personally. But he's done it in such a way that he was, without jumping ship from Epstein, he jumped ship otherwise. Very clever man. You don't make the billions he has made without being very wily. But he's never been accused legally of any wrongdoing with regard to the Epstein matter. And I would imagine he regarded Epstein as being very capable financially. Otherwise, they wouldn't have been monetarily in bed together for the length of time that they were. Sam Smith says, Ms. VRG has been paid approximately $7 million so far from litigation and media interviews. Poor darling. How can she survive on such little money? I mean, Mickey, come on, wake up, wake up. Console Motty. Motty's sympathising with poor Virginia Roberts-Giuffre's penury. I mean, she's only made $7 million so far from litigation and media interviews. Now, this is really interesting that Sam Smith has to say. When she returned from England with her $15,000, it was her father who accompanied her to buy a car using the $15,000 she had earned, and earned is in big block capitals. So, your daughter, to whom you probably gave permission to travel overseas with an extremely rich older man, well, no probably about it, my dear, she wouldn't have been able to fly without parental permission, comes back with a load of money, and that didn't concern you? I actually find that quite disingenuous, considering that you were the person who picked her up from the police station when she was 13 years old, after she had lived with a 65-year-old pimp for 6 months. I have seen statements attributed to him where he states that Prince Andrew should spend time in jail, Methinks that people who live in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Well, I couldn't agree more. I also think that if Prince Andrew is being put under the microscope with no evidence except that of a proven liar, why is the proven liar and her father, who was apparently, if not completely blind to the realities, complicit and approving of all that money? I mean, what did he think she was doing to get $4,000 a week from Epstein? What did he think she was doing? I mean, what grade of massage do you give to get $4,000 a week? $15,000 for obviously claiming to have, by your own account, managed to get a prince into bed, thereby betraying, at the very least, his reluctance, and quite possibly, and in fact more than likely, gilding the lily so that you would get your payoff whether anything happened or not. Because remember, they took her word for it. We have her word and the 15,000 reasons she had for coming up with her version of that situation. And we have Prince Andrew's word. Prince Andrew says it never happened. She says it did, and has 15,000 nice dollar bills to prove that it was in her interest to affirm something taking place, whether it did or didn't. Her father picks her up. Her father takes her shopping. Her father, who is clearly capable enough, doesn't figure out that you don't get $15,000 for batting your eyelashes, not to mention the several $1,000s a week she was getting, while under the care of her parents, even though she, presumably with their permission, was living with various men. Now, I'm not accusing her parents of colluding with her living with that man, I think his name is Ron Eppinger, when she was 13 or whatever age she was, the pimp, the one who was convicted of sex trafficking. I'm not accusing them. I'm sure they must have been tearing their hair out. But don't tell me they didn't know what she was, because they're the ones who had to fish her out of the gutter, fish her off the streets, years before she ever met either Epstein or Prince Andrew. And all of a sudden, she's an innocent? Well, I'm sorry. If any child of mine pitched up with several $1,000s, I would want to know where they got it from. And if it was apparent that it wasn't from something appropriate, I would have hit the roof and prevented them from going back into these iniquitous circles. So yes, I actually think her father certainly does bear examination. You know, the problem with when people create fictive scenarios to ensnare others, the problem is they might end up ensnaring themselves. And I would suggest that this is what is happening with Virginia Giuffre and her father. Appalling. The whole thing stinks to high heaven. And on that note, I will say thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been of some interest to you. If it has, please like, share, subscribe, press the notification bell. Please keep the questions coming in. And may I say, I'm hoping that we're going to be able to get off this rather distasteful subject sooner rather than later. Thank you. God bless and goodbye.